The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Okay, no offense to the city of Abbotsford, but guess what? There's a couple of Canucks who are done with you.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer, currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks because it is your Canucks every damn day. And we're not here without you and you and you and you and you tune into the show. So we appreciate the hell out of you for doing so. One love to the Locked On Podcast Network, doing the most for sports fans across the world. And one love to my co-host, Kyle Bowen. More on him in a few minutes. Again, I kicked him off the show last week. Will he could be coming back? Who knows? But I'm pretty sure that at least a couple of Vancouver Canucks will not be going back to the farm on a full-time basis. And let's touch on some of the performances from younger Canucks, specifically Aatu, Raty, and Elias Pettersson here to kick off this episode of Locked On Canucks. I do want to touch on Jonathan Lekkerimaki as well. Healthy scratched against the Vegas Golden Knights. Was that the right call? And will that guy be going back to Abbotsford next season, or is he ready to be a full-time NHLer? We'll also get to the GOATs of the week here as well on Locked On Canucks, which we do every Monday. Let's kick it off with DPD, okay? And here's one crazy stat about the Vancouver Canucks. And for those of you who have followed this team for a long time, you know that this team, not only have they been the most cursed franchise in NHL history, but they struggle immensely to draft and develop defensemen. And thank God for DPD, because he might be one of literally not even a handful of defensemen that this team has drafted and developed over the last 20 years. So I'm looking back at the draft record. I mean, Alex Edler, of course, from the 2004 draft, a comparable player in my eyes to Elias Pettersson. He was drafted and developed from the 2004 draft. And after that, it is slim pickings. The Canucks drafted and developed Ben Hutton. And that's pretty much it, aside from Quinn Hughes as well. So we're talking about in the last 20 years, the Canucks have drafted and developed 3 defensemen. Of course, guys like Gustav Forsling went off and developed with other teams, but not with your Vancouver Canucks. So Elias Pettersson could be just the 4th defenseman that the Canucks have drafted and developed here over the past 20 years. And that is a crazy stat in its own. But again, this Canucks management does deserve some credit. Guys like Kirill Kudryavtsev, Sori Minio, maybe joining Elias Pettersson here at the NHL level sooner rather than later. But if this week taught us anything about the Vancouver Canucks, and I'm not focusing on those Fugazi playoff odds for a reason, because the Canucks are done. We all know it. Elias Pettersson, to me, might have been the most impressive Canuck from last week. I believe he was the most impressive Canuck in that 5-0 shellacking against the Kraken. One of the best Canucks on the ice against the Anaheim Ducks. He is ready to be a full-time NHLer, and that is a massive development for this Vancouver Canucks team who, again, not only have they failed immensely at drafting and developing defensemen, but the team needed his size, his speed, and his physicality. He's brought it all to the table for your Vancouver Canucks, and again, probably ready for a bigger role sooner rather than later. And now I think it's fair to ask, should Rick Tocchet, let the reins off of DPD a little bit here, considering the fact that the team is, they're out of the dance right now, okay? They are not making the playoffs this season. Because you look at Elias Pettersson's ice time, and he's still, among the lower ranks on the team. He did get a bit of an uptick in that Seattle game, of course, the Anaheim game as well. But that was largely because both of those games weren't close. Of course, the Seattle game not going in the Canucks' favor and the Anaheim game going in the Canucks' favor. But still in those games, the Seattle game, he finishes with 14:53 of ice time in a match where, again, I thought he was probably the best player on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks. But compared to the rest of the defense, I mean, man, oh man, he's still pretty much dead last in terms of ice time, right? Derek Forbort, Tyler Myers, Quinn Hughes, Philip Peronic, Marcus Pettersson, all getting more ice time than DPD. I just wonder if DP deserves a bit more from the Vancouver Canucks here, because this guy, man, oh man, he might be the second coming of Alex Edler. What does a junior Eagle look like? I don't know. But I do know that Elias Pettersson, he for sure is done in Abbotsford. Again, if you missed the show last week with Brandon Astle, the play-by-play voice of the Abbotsford Canucks, he alluded to the fact that the Canucks would only send down 3 guys at the trade deadline to be eligible for the Abbotsford Canucks in the playoffs. And they chose Artur Shilovs and Jonathan Lekkerimaki and Victor Mancini. That means DPD will not play again for the Abbotsford Canucks this season. So he is, in my opinion, he is firmly done at the AHL level. Pretty impressive considering he was a 3rd-round pick not even 3 years ago. And again, both him and Jonathan Lekkerimaki from that same draft. We'll touch on Jonathan Lekkerimaki a bit later. Again, the take about Elias Pettersson never going back to Abbotsford isn't a bold one. I think that's one that we all assume is true for your Vancouver Canucks. Now, with Raty, I think it's a bit of a different case. But I will say that I also think Raty is done with the Abbotsford Canucks after this season. Of course, he's going to go back down there. He's going to go help the Abbotsford Canucks compete for a Calder Cup. But you look at what Raty's done since his recall, and he's just looked a bit more confident out there. I think that's the main thing I've noticed in his game. This is a guy that's brought the hockey IQ. He's pretty sound defensively. He's obviously great in the faceoff circle, but he's just crashing the net more. He's taking some more chances offensively. And again, the main thing for me is his speed. That's still a bit of an issue at the NHL level. But I do think this guy, especially if he just focuses on skating all offseason, he is not going back to your Abbotsford Canucks. And it kind of begs the question when it comes to Raty. As a Canucks fan, do you feel comfortable if the Vancouver Canucks replace Pius Suter with Raty? Now that take might be a bit bolder. But again, you look at Pius Suter right now, he's in line to cash in with a contract that's going to pay him easily over $4 million in free agency. Again, if Elias Pettersson and Filipino are healthy and ready to go, is Pius Suter going to slot in as your 3rd-line center? Again, he could shift to the wing as well. So that kind of eliminates the Raty replacing Pius Suter argument. But I would argue that if Raty just solely focuses on becoming a quicker skater this summer, he might be ready to be a full-time 3rd-line NHL center as soon as next season. And again, I think you have if Pius Suter does return the Vancouver Canucks, he can be there as the insurance policy. But I think the argument's been made before, and I still think it's valid. Pius Suter is probably better suited to play in the wing. Better suited to play in the wing for your Vancouver Canucks. But having the ability to fill that center isn't a bad thing for your Vancouver Canucks either. But again, I look at Raty, his development of late. Again, now he's up to 6 goals on the season. That's one behind guys like Nils Höglander, Dakota Joshua. Of course, he's kind of piled on here over the past couple of weeks. But Raty, again, providing a bit of spark to the Canucks here and looking good in a 3rd-line role. I mean, especially when he was playing with Dakota Joshua and Kiefer Sherwood. I mean, that's a 3rd line that throws the body. You're talking about the 3 guys on the Canucks who on a per 60 basis hit more than anybody else. Of course, Kiefer Sherwood hits more than anybody in the NHL. But Dakota Joshua is up there as well, second on the Canucks with 182 hits this season. I like that idea of a potential 3rd line next year. Kiefer Sherwood, Dakota Joshua, and Raty. Not the quickest line out there, although Kiefer Sherwood does bring some speed. But again, if you're looking at cost efficiency for your Vancouver Canucks and guys who have frankly earned the opportunity to be full-time NHLers, I think Raty is ready. He was pretty damn close to making this team out of training camp to start this season. He was one of the most impressive Canucks in preseason. Had, of course, a 20-game cup of coffee, if you want to call it that, with the Canucks early on this season. And going back to Abbotsford was good for his development. It was good to be around Manny Malhotra, who has, of course, impacted a lot of Canucks this season. But Raty, I think, is ready to be a full-time NHLer next season. And I'm betting on the fact that he will not go back to the Abbotsford Canucks next season or likely again in his hockey career. Let me know in the comments, are Raty and Elias Pettersson, Are Aatu and Elias Pettersson ready to be full-time NHLers? Are they done with the Abbotsford Canucks? Are there other guys in terms of the youngsters on the Canucks who deserve to be full-time NHL players as soon as next season? I'm Trevor Beggs. You're listening to Locked On Canucks. On the other side, let's touch about another young guy in Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Again, he got healthy scratched before the Vegas game yesterday in favor of Max Sasson. What? Is he ready to be a full-time NHL next season, or will he spend some time on the farm with the Abbotsford Canucks? We'll also get to the GOATs of the week as well. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And this ad read coming up, it matters to me because I might need a new co-host. And you know, if I need a new co-host, I'm going to be using Indeed. Whether you're an employer or an employee looking for work, the place you got to go for your job hunting needs is Indeed, okay? And when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need, baby. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites because Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Now, maybe I'll throw it out here right now. I've been without my co-host now for a week here on Locked On Canucks. Did I suspend him? Did he leave? More on that coming up in a couple minutes. But man, oh man, check out Indeed. You might find the job posting for the Locked On Canucks co-host here coming up in the pretty near future. All right. And even with my day job, sometimes you need that right hire like yesterday and the pressure's on. And every day without that right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. You can speed up your hiring process with the $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast, Locked On Canucks. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed. It's all you need, baby. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And yeah, the vibes aren't as good here as they were through Kyle and I, our first 16 to 18 months on Locked On Canucks. And for those who are new to the show, again, our first day hosting Locked On Canucks was March 1st, 2023, the day the Canucks made the Filip Hronek trade. Man, oh man, a lot of roster turnover since then. But really since March 1st of 2023 up until this season, times were good here. Being a Canucks fan and on Locked On Canucks. Of course, as of late, with the Canucks looking like they're going to miss the playoffs, the vibes ain't as good. But again, there's reasons for some hope here. Let's not get too crazy. We are Canucks fans after all. But guys like Aatu, Raty and Elias Pettersson giving me hope for the future, baby. Because I do think these guys are going to be full-time Vancouver Canucks for the foreseeable future. But what about Jonathan Lekkerimaki? No, I'm not going to go out there and say he's a trade candidate because the Canucks do need top six offense. They do need to draft and develop talent. And aside from Willander and Jonathan Lekkerimaki, there's not really a lot of blue chip prospects there. But I do wonder if it's going to take Jonathan Lekkerimaki just a bit more time to develop into a full-time NHLer. And I'm reading between the tea leaves here a bit, right? I mean, Rick Tocchet, when he was asked last week about Jonathan Lekkermaki's ice time, he kind of fired back to reporters a bit about reporters, more or less bitching about Jonathan Lekkerimaki not having more ice time. And he said, quote, "What do you want me to do? Play him at center?" And again, it's interesting to see that over the weekend, Jonathan Lekkerimaki, he does pick up an assist in the game against the Anaheim Ducks. Statistically, according to our friends at Hockey Stat Cards, was one of the best Canucks in that game. But lo and behold, he found himself scratched prior to the Vegas game on Sunday night. And I do think a part of that was the fact that a guy like Max Sasson looked pretty darn good when he played for the Vancouver Canucks on Saturday. Of course, knows on shaking up at practice, a reason for Sasson's recall there. But again, you look at the opportunity for Lekkerimaki, and he's had some time on the power play, looked dynamic there for a bit. We're all clamoring for him to get more power play time. And then he's kind of had some shaky moments there, like just not moving his feet, bobbling the puck a bit. And again, this is a pretty young NHL player now, 24 games into his career, 3 goals, 6 points overall. But you have a management team in place, and you have a head coach in Rick Tocchet, and they preached marinating and drafting and developing guys. I think a guy like Elias Pettersson forced his way onto this team, coming in at a time where they needed a guy with size, with speed, with physicality, a guy who I think they were probably pretty happy to let marinate in the minors for a bit longer. Marinate like a nice juicy steak, baby. And he pushed his way onto this team and looked better than Carson Soucy when he came here. And of course, was miles ahead of the guys like Noah Juleson and Vincent Desharnais as well. Jonathan Lekkerimaki, I think he's got an opportunity. He's earned it down there with his goal scoring ability in the AHL. He scored goals in a number of different ways, and the Canucks need more scoring in their offense. But he hasn't delivered the same pop, the same impact that Elias Pettersson had. And honestly, we've seen this Canucks organization, mainly in the Jim Benning era, rush prospects to the NHL far before they were ready. I'm not convinced that Jonathan Lekkerimaki is going to be a full-time player for the Vancouver Canucks next season. I would love to be wrong. Prove me wrong. But Jonathan Lekkerimaki, again, he's been shuttled back and forth between the minors quite a bit this season due to injuries. And, he has earned it to an extent, but it has been more of a need for Jonathan Lekkerimaki to be with the Vancouver Canucks. I don't think there's a ton of harm in having him start the season in Abbotsford next year. Seeing how he does over 20 to 30 games again before you bring him up to the Vancouver Canucks. Because if you're banking next season on, let's say, Brock Boeser walking and Jonathan Lekkerimaki stepping into his shoes, I have news for you. If you're not happy with Brock Boeser, like Jonathan Lekkerimaki is going to be under an intense spotlight next season. And a move like that just feels like what the Canucks would have done in 2016-17, not what they should be doing in 2025. 2026. And look, I like Jonathan Lekkerimaki as a prospect. I like the fact that he is scoring goals from different areas, right? With the Canucks, we've only seen 3, but in the minors, if you watch the goals he's scored down there, they've come from all over the ice. The guy is better at cutting to the middle than he was, especially after his first SHL season there. But also, we all know he needs to get stronger, right? He's a guy that gets pushed off the puck. He's been knocked around. I want to see Jonathan Lekkerimaki get stronger in the summer and likely spend some time in Abbotsford at the start of the season. I don't need to see Jonathan Lekkerimaki, come to this team and have I guess you can call it a sophomore slump, right? He won't be a rookie anymore statistically if he plays a couple more games here. Let Jonathan Lekkerimaki, your most prized prospect on offense, let him marinate a little bit longer because the Canucks, they kind of need him to develop into an impact player here. Because trading Jonathan Lekkerimaki away to get another top 6 piece doesn't make a lot of sense. You need to develop this guy properly so that he turns into a real, legit top 6 prospect for this team who's going to give you some offense. I mean, look around the rest of the Pacific Division. You see guys like Matt Coronato in Calgary starting to light it up for the Flames there. I just don't want to see Jonathan Lekkerimaki rush to the NHL just to have him be a 15 to 20 goal guy next year. Let him cook, baby. Let him cook, okay? Nothing wrong with a little cooking. Let me know in the comments or where you like to interact with us. Do you think Jonathan Lekkerimaki will be a full-time NHL player for all of next season? Do you think that's the right call? Or do you think that he should spend some time down in Abbotsford next season? Now, the final caveat there is, of course, training camp next year. Lekkerimaki looked pretty darn good in Canucks training camp this year. But that being said, he could come in and blow the doors off next year as well. But I just don't think you rush this guy. Again, you got Henrik and Daniel's organization. They've been through it. They know the rigors of what it takes to be an NHL hockey player. And they went through more or less a couple years of pretty intense training before they turned into the elite NHLers that they became. I think Jonathan Lekkerimaki can probably learn a thing or two from that. I'm Trevor Beggs. You're listening to Locked On Canucks. Let's wrap up the show on the other side with our Goats of the Week and an update from my co-host, Kyle Bowen. That's coming up on the other side after we shout out our friends over at Monarch Money. Man, oh man. I mean, don't tell my employers, but sometimes managing money for me can be a bit of a problem. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder where the F did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Monarch Money, man, keeping the love alive because you don't want that money getting in the middle of your relationship. So help keep that love alive with Monarch Money, and you can also take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for not 20, not 30, not 40, but 50% off your first year. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every damn day, even when the team's out of the dance, baby. And hey, like I alluded to off the top of the second segment, things were good for the Canucks since Kyle and I took over, but we also did miss the playoffs the first season that we did Locked On Canucks. So again, we'll make sure we got some exciting stuff coming for you this offseason. I'll continue my search for a co-host, whether that's Kyle Bowen or somebody else. We'll try to get some more guests on too. I believe I will be joined by, I like to call him my buddy, but Patrick Johnson of the Province on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Canucks, breaking down the hellish season that was for the Vancouver Canucks. Patrick Johnson, man, he's got the inside scoop on what the hell went wrong for your Vancouver Canucks. But we'll get to that tomorrow. Today, let's talk about what happened last week, and specifically the good of what happened last week when we go over this segment that we like to call Goats of the Week. All right, this is our Goats of the Week segment here on Locked On Canucks, where we rank the 5 best Canucks from last week. And I'm not going to lie, this is a bit of a tough week to rank. So just to recap the week that was for the Vancouver Canucks, they lost 5-0 to the Seattle Kraken on Wednesday. That game, if their playoff dreams weren't dead, they were officially dead after the game against the Seattle Kraken on Monday. And then on Saturday, of course, they beat the Anaheim Ducks 6-2, scored 5 goals in less than 5 minutes, a franchise record for the Vancouver Canucks. Like I said, let's show some of the good here on the show. Dale O in the comments saying 13 different Canucks got a point on Saturday. And man, oh man, thank God for that. Because the rest of the week was pretty bleak for your Vancouver Canucks. Wednesday was bleak, and of course, last night against the Vegas Golden Knights, a 3-2 loss in which, the Canucks team, give them credit, they battled hard, but they also, they just kind of lack the juice right now because, they're not that great of a team. Unfortunately, that's the case when they're missing guys like Elias Pettersson and Philip Hedl in action, and Quinn Hughes, again, he's looking pretty banged up as well. And you want to talk about Saturday for the Vancouver Canucks. Again, 13 players got a point. That means only 5 guys didn't get a point for your Vancouver Canucks. They were Aatu, Raty, Victor Mancini, Drew O'Connor, Pius Suter, and Jake DeBrusk. And maybe quickly before I get into goats, Jake DeBrusk, man, oh man, he's just been far, far too quiet for the Vancouver Canucks for most of the season, to be honest. And we'll do some more deep dives into specific players as we get into the offseason. But Jake DeBrusk, he kind of lived up to the billing, right? As a guy who is a streaky scorer, but you still wanted to see more from that guy, especially down the stretch here for your Vancouver Canucks. And the other note I'll make before we get into Goats of the Week quickly here is this might be the only list this season where Quinn Hughes wasn't on the list while being healthy. And again, it was a bit of a tough week for Quinn Hughes overall. You look at, if you want to look at plus minus, he was a -6 on the week. But not only that, possession-wise, Quinn Hughes, the Canucks were dominated when he was on the ice. And look, I don't want to say this is Quinn Hughes just giving up on the Canucks. That's not the term I want to use. But, I do wonder if part of him is a bit deflated based on the fact that they went into this week with their playoff odds going from, 40 to 50% a couple weeks ago to, less than 10% at the start of this week, now at 1%. I wonder, obviously he's going to give it his all, but mentally that does take a toll on you, especially after the season that he led the Canucks to last season, especially based on the fact that he was pretty much at an MVP caliber level up until the past couple of weeks, where his game has slipped, due to injury and other factors around the Vancouver Canucks. So a tough week for Quinn Hughes. He does not get on the go to the week. And man, oh man, I'm not sure if my pick for go to the week here is going to be a bit controversial, but my number one go to the week for your Vancouver Canucks is Marcus Pettersson. What? But again, look at the Canucks in the last week. Pretty underwhelming against the Vegas Golden Knights. Very underwhelming against the Seattle Kraken. And then, good spread out offense from their lineup against the Anaheim Ducks. But Marcus Pettersson, to me, was a steady and calming presence throughout the week, pretty much, for the Vancouver Canucks. You look at statistically as well. I look at a guy like Filip Hronek. When he played with Quinn Hughes this week, the two were god-awful together. But when Filip Hronek played with Marcus Pettersson, he was great. Underlying numbers through the roof. And Marcus Pettersson, again, he's helped the Canucks have one of the best penalty kills in the NHL, but he just doesn't make mistakes out there. And again, for this version of Go to the Week, I think it's bad news for the Vancouver Canucks that, in my eyes, Marcus Pettersson was the best player last week. But good news for a guy like Marcus Pettersson, I guess, who, based on that contract, he's going to be Canuck for a long time. And, I've given my thoughts on that trade already. Go check out that episode from last week, rehashing the JT Miller trade return. But Marcus Pettersson is a good hockey player. He proved that last week. He was on the ice for 5 goals for at even strength, 3 goals against. So, the Canucks, again, they scored, 6 or 7 even strength goals this week? But basically, Marcus Pettersson was on the ice for almost all of them. He tried to do his best Quinn Hughes impression. Number 2 on my Go to the Week ranking. He would have been number 1 if it wasn't for last night, but it was Elias Pettersson, a.k.a. DPD. I thought Elias Pettersson had a tough night against Vegas, but I think he was probably the best player on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks, especially on Wednesday against the Seattle Kraken, but I would argue on Saturday against the Anaheim Ducks as well. Again, a lot of guys got ice time in that game, but Elias Pettersson, he gets his first career goal, well-deserved, and again, maybe there's more offense to his game than we think. I'm not going to say he has Alex Edler-like potential offensively, but I think he has more offensive potential than your typical second, third pairing defenseman. I think he's especially got more, offensive potential than a guy like Marcus Pettersson for your Vancouver Canucks. But DPD, he mixes it up. He's quick. He's physical. And again, he played 2 really solid games this week for your Vancouver Canucks. At number 3, I do have Brock Boeser. He had a goal and an assist this week. Brock Boeser is still a Vancouver Canuck, and he's still producing. So that's a good thing. He's producing more than most of the Vancouver Canucks right now, especially producing more than a guy like Jake DeBrusk. At number 4 on Goats of the Week, I do have Kiefer Sherwood. Again, giving it his all. He's turned into more of a playmaker these last couple of weeks too. Not scoring as much as he was early in the season, but making some good plays to set up teammates. And again, not a lot of Canucks were great this week in terms of putting up the points, but Kiefer Sherwood is one of the few Canucks that had a multi-point week with 2 assists in 3 games. And at number 5, I'm not sure if this is controversial either, but I do have Nils Höglander, who played a grand total of 1 game this week, and it was last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. I thought he was the Canucks' best player on the ice against Vegas. Pretty impressive considering the fact that he just came back from injury, and he does score for the Vancouver Canucks as well. But again, a sign of the times for your Vancouver Canucks. They're out of the dance. Again, if you want a little slice of positivity, baby, let's go. The young guys stepping up for your Vancouver Canucks. That includes Nils Höglander, and it, of course, includes Aatu and Elias Pettersson. I'll try to keep stepping up here on Locked On Canucks. Oh, my co-host, man. What's going on with Kyle Bowen, buddy? Man, oh, man, look at me. I'm the worst friend ever. I almost forgot about my co-host before I signed out of the show. Let's see what the F is going on here. Let's see here. Okay, dear people of Locked On Canucks. Hey, Trevor, I forgot how to say my name. That's what happens when you lose the love of the game. As Drake always says, nothing was the same. What's 5 plus 4? It doesn't even matter anymore. I guess I'll have to stick to writing and crying. It's either that or crying and writing. Farewell, my friend. It was a pleasure to be knowing. Off I go on this boat. Not a whale, rowing. Row, row, row your boat gently down this bad dream. So long, Trevor. Man, that was That was dark, man. Kyle, you okay, buddy? Again, so I gotta say the truth before I get out of here on Locked On Canucks. My co-host Kyle Bowen called this the JT Miller situation, but we told people that he took a leave from the show, too emotional about the Canucks and their losing. But the truth is, much like the JT Miller situation, I had to kick Kyle off the show, okay? It's not that I don't love Kyle anymore. The guy's my brother. I love this guy. I was worrying about his mental health, man. I mean, if you've been around with us since at least January, you know that Kyle was hospitalized in January with a bad case of Canuckassuckaitis. And I worry about this guy's health, man. The doctor said he still can't work out. And here he is, pouring all this emotional energy into Locked On Canucks. And for what? A team that's one of the biggest embarrassments in NHL history? I can't let my brother do that, man. Kyle Bowen, man. I miss you, buddy. Get well soon, but you can't come back on Locked On Canucks until you take care of your mental health. And the same goes for you and you and you and you and you. Take care of your mental health first and foremost, baby. But for me, I'll continue to step up here on Locked On Canucks. And I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. If you like what we're doing, go subscribe and like on YouTube. On the podcast side, go follow us and leave a 5-star review. The plan is to have the province's Patrick Johnson on the show tomorrow to break down everything that happened with the Vancouver Canucks this season. Until next time, I'm Trevor Beggs, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.